Welcome to Crafted Nest, where simple hands create beautiful spaces. If you've ever stood in a small, paved yard wondering how to bring soul, greenery, and a touch of Italy into it, this episode is for you. Today, we'll walk through inspiring, down-to-earth DIY ideas that feel warm, lived in, and genuinely achievable, no matter how compact your outdoor space is. We'll take cues from rustic textures, vintage accents, and the quiet romance of climbing vines, terracotta pots, and whispered light. So settle in, breathe deep, and if you love real-life transformations and handmade charm, we invite you to subscribe to Crafted Nest. It's free, and it means the world to small creators like us. Click the bell so you never miss a moment of green inspiration. Let's begin crafting your own little Italian garden escape. There's a certain hush that falls when you sit beneath a canopy of vines. Elena didn't build her urban garden for show. It came together slowly, like a handwritten letter over seasons. At first, there was only a sliver of yard and a second-hand table, a pair of bench chairs she'd rescued from a sidewalk giveaway. But one spring, she planted a single wisteria vine and let it find its own way. Years passed in the form of sun-dappled breakfasts and conversations that softened as the vines thickened. Now, that same pergola holds a tapestry of twisting green and violet blooms, casting dappled shadows on the gravel path below. The cafe table, still scratched but now beloved, hosts morning coffee, notebook sketches, and basil sprigs from a nearby pot. What once was empty became a room without walls. The vines listen. The iron chairs sigh gently when you sit. The trellis creaks with age and wind, whispering memories that only plants remember. You don't need a grand plan to create this. Just let your frame be simple. Reclaimed wood, a trellis from a hardware store, or even bamboo poles, and trust the plants to finish the story. Grow climbers like clematis, grapevine, or jasmine. Let them tangle, bloom, spill. Add chairs that feel lived in. A table where a glass of wine looks like it belongs. Sometimes the best garden rooms aren't built. They're grown. She always walked the path slowly, barefoot when the stones had stored the sun just enough. Marta's garden wasn't much wider than a hallway, but she treated it like a countryside stroll. She'd press gravel down between two narrow borders, then tuck tiny herbs into soil on either side, just enough room for life to escape her fingertips when she passed. The lavender grew first, its spires swaying like sleepy dancers in the breeze. Then thyme crept in low, filling the gaps. Rosemary followed, sturdy and upright, giving structure to the edge. Each plant was placed not for formality, but for memory, for how it would feel brushing her ankle, how it would smell as the day grew warm. The sound of gravel crunching beneath her steps became part of the ritual. A small sound, a grounding one. The path was short, only a few meters, but it stretched like time, slow, fragrant, sacred. To make your own, you need nothing grand. A bag of pea gravel, a few rooted herb clippings from a friend's yard, the space between two fence lines or along the side of your house. Start with lavender. It forgives neglect and rewards you with color and calm. Add creeping thyme or sweet marjoram to fill the spaces, and let your feet find the rhythm of the stones. This isn't just a walkway. It's a living scent trail, a place where every step tells your garden who you are. In every corner of Sophia's courtyard, stories hang quietly. She didn't buy garden art from catalogs. She found it, remembered it, saved it. A chipped pot from her grandmother's kitchen. The rusted hand rake that once shaped her father's rose bed. An old iron ladle that now held a tumble of trailing succulents. These were not decorations. They were keepsakes reborn as whispers on the wall. One stucco stretch, once plain and beige, became her canvas. With nails and twine and the patience of someone who sees time as a friend, she began to build a gallery of her life. Each object she added had its own weight, not just in material, but in memory. A bent spoon twisted into a hook, a broken plate glued whole again, and mounted like a family crest. Beside it all, soft green ivy curled, framing the past in slow movement. You can start the same way. Choose one wall, wood, brick, even the back of a shed. Gather items that might have been forgotten. A single glove, a cracked tile, a metal strainer, a pot with a hole too big to hold soil. Arrange them as you would on a shelf, by instinct and affection. Let your wall be imperfect, Let it grow with you. Because gardens are not just for flowers. They're for fragments of life, pinned up gently where they can breathe again. Johnny never left the city, but every morning felt like Florence. His secret? A garden room the size of a parking spot, framed not by mountains, but by cracked stone walls and rusted drain pipes. In this tucked-away square calm, he laid 2 chairs, a cafe table, and the scent of morning espresso. The chairs didn't match. One came from a thrift shop on his street. The other, a hand-me-down from an aunt who didn't mind parting with that squeaky thing. But when he pulled them up to the mosaic table he'd tiled by hand one weekend, they felt meant to be. Each morning, he brought out a small cup of coffee and a notebook. Birds above, traffic below. It was enough. What you need is not space, it's intimacy. Find your corner, the unused balcony, the bit of alley between fence and wall. Add 2 chairs that feel good to sit in, a table no larger than your reach. Then color it with soft details, a potted herb, a stone trivet, a folded cloth napkin, and let the rest be simplicity. This kind of nook isn't built to impress. It's built to contain a moment. And if you sit still long enough, the city will fade, and the scent of rosemary and roasted beans will take its place. There was a time when Luca thought fountains were for palaces. Then one summer, he filled a clay bowl with water, added a solar pump, and watched his garden exhale. The trickle wasn't loud. It whispered. It echoed gently off the stucco, softened by time growing wild at its base. From that moment on, his yard was different, more patient, more alive. The birds came first, finches sipping at dawn, then bees, butterflies, and the quiet realization that the city had not disappeared, but softened. Fountains don't need grandeur. They need rhythm, a sound that says, stay a while. Build yours with what you have. A basin, a repurposed sink, a ceramic pot you never planted. Nestle it into gravel or soil. Let it sit among lavender, next to a vine-covered chair, or under your pergola. Add a small pump, solar or wired. And listen, the water won't speak loudly. It'll hum in the background, a note of calm in the chaos. And somehow, that sound, simple, constant, will make even the tightest city yard feel like it belongs to the countryside. In her garden, Isabella left one corner wild on purpose. Not messy, but untamed, soft at the edges, ruled by rhythm instead of rules. Here, time tangled with calendula, bees zigzagged through clouds of mint, the fennel flowered without pruning, and swallowtails returned each year like old friends. There was no grand design, only an invitation, a gesture that said, this patch is yours too. She added a dish of water filled with pebbles, shallow enough for bees to sip, hung a low branch with a bird feeder, left seed heads standing after bloom. And they came. In a world where gardens are often clipped and sculpted into silence, she chose to listen instead. To the hum of wings, the rustle of leaves, the unseen symphony of pollinators at work. You can do the same. Dedicate a square meter of soil or a deep pot to native flowers. Choose lavender, salvia, borage, or whatever your local bees know best. Avoid sprays. Let things bloom, seed, and sway. Add a perch, a bath, a bloom with no expectation. And in return, you'll receive movement, color, and life. Because even in the smallest city nook, a sanctuary can bloom. For the bees, the butterflies, and for you. In one corner of her city balcony, Livia placed a pot. Not just any pot, but one she found years ago at a market in Napoli. Its surface dappled with time, its shape imperfect and strong. Into it, she planted a dwarf olive tree, barely knee-high, its slender leaves already catching sunlight like silver threads. She didn't expect it to transform the space, but it did. As it grew, it brought something older than the city around her, a sense of lineage, of patience, of sun-baked hills and hands that once pressed olives into oil. It didn't need much, just a sunny spot and a moment of stillness each morning. She watered with care, brushed her fingers along the branches, and sometimes tied soft cloths at the base to protect it in the cooler months. The tree never bore fruit, but offered peace. And in its shade, even just a little, she felt rooted. To begin your own, Choose a pot that breathes, terracotta or ceramic, wide and deep. Find a dwarf olive variety, suited for pots. Place it where light lingers. Let it grow slowly, beautifully. Prune not for perfection, but for balance. And let it remind you that even in a tight concrete world, you can carry the grace of the Mediterranean in a single living form. Camilla didn't have flower beds, but she had stories held in clay. Each terracotta pot in her garden had a memory. One from a friend's farewell gift, one pulled from her mother's old balcony, one found abandoned beside a florist's back gate. None of them matched. All of them mattered. She didn't line them up. She clustered them like conversations. Some sat on bricks, others on shelves, some balanced on the steps. The taller ones held rosemary and citrus. The smaller ones spilled ivy and marjoram. Moss crept in along the rims. Cracks deepened over the years like laugh lines. It was messy, alive, and deeply beautiful. To recreate it, think in shapes, not rows. Use whatever you have, whether clay pots, chipped ceramics, even broken urns. Layer by height. Mix herbs with blooms, trailing plants with bushy ones. Let them lean, touch, and grow into each other. Don't scrub the patina away. Let the sun kiss the pots into color. Let the rain mark them. Terracotta is memory in mineral form. And when you sit among them, barefoot on warm stones, with your hand resting on the edge of a pot that's known a dozen summers, you'll understand. The charm was never in their perfection. It was in their togetherness. Every step made a sound. Not loud, not sharp, just a soft, satisfying whisper of stone beneath skin. A rhythm only found in gardens where gravel paths bend and narrow like the passage of a thought. Emilio laid the first stones himself, his hands dusty, his knees sore, but his mind quiet. It was the first time his tiny yard began to feel like a place rather than a project. The gravel wasn't just for practicality. It became the music of the space. With every passing day, the path softened. Rain compacted it. Fallen petals mingled with grit. The scent of thyme edged closer. Lavender brushed the ankles, and the crunch of gravel underfoot became a kind of welcome. These paths, when thoughtfully placed, do more than guide. They invite. They give shape to a yard too small for grand gestures. They cradle water, frame beds, divide spaces not with walls, but with suggestion. Start with what lies beneath. Crushed granite, pea gravel, limestone, anything that feels good beneath your feet. Line it with herbs or low flowers. Tuck in stepping stones if you wish, or leave it wild and fluid. This isn't just a walkway. It's the first sentence in the story your garden tells when the gate swings open and the first footstep falls. Francesca's garden never stayed the same. It breathed, shifted, aged, and not once did she ask it to freeze in perfection. Summer brought baskets of basil, sunburnt cushions, and lazy meals outdoors. Autumn arrived with rusted foliage, candles flickering in wind, and pots freshly planted with sage and cabbage roses. When winter tiptoed in, she didn't retreat. She wrapped her bench in wool throws, placed dried orange slices in bowls, and watched the birds dance among the bare branches. Come spring, new life arrived not in a grand flourish, but in the quiet budding of rosemary and violets. She didn't redesign the garden. She let it evolve. This is a quiet magic of a living space. You don't need to start over with each season. Just listen. Swap lightweight fabrics for thicker ones. Replace bent flowers with cold, hardy textures. Change your planters like you'd change a coat. Bring in lanterns. Tuck in evergreen sprigs. Replant with intention. Let your space echo the months, not fight them. Because the most beautiful gardens aren't frozen in time. They breathe with it. And when you build a space that honors the rhythm of the year, even a simple chair beside a terracotta pot becomes a new experience each time the light changes. Julia never bought a set. Her garden furniture was a collection, gathered like old letters from different hands, none of them matching, all of them loved. A bentwood chair from a thrift shop in Palermo, a wicker stool left beside a neighbor's trash, a folding table with rusted hinges, but a heart that still held steady. And when she placed them together, under the trailing vines and among her clustered pots, they looked like they belonged to one another. What she knew, what every well-loved garden teaches you, is that charm doesn't come in symmetry. It comes in stories. And every chair with worn edges, every table with rings from old cups, carries memory in its bones. To bring that into your own space, you don't need a match set. You need curiosity. Search for shapes that comfort. Look for patina, wood that is weathered, metal that's softened with time. Embrace the dented, the uneven, then dress them gently. A soft throw, a faded cushion, a vintage tablecloth that lets the wind lift its corners. In this way, your garden becomes not just beautiful, but hospitable, because the best places to sit are the ones that feel like someone already has, and they've left the warmth behind. Alessandro would run his hands along the wall each morning, not to clean, not to repair, but to remember. His garden wall wasn't just a boundary, it was a character. Sun-bleached stucco with the warmth of decades. Brick that bore the fingerprint of a mason long gone. Stone that held heat long after twilight, glowing softly as dusk fell. In Tuscany, they say a wall should speak before the flowers bloom. And it did. It held shadows like secrets. It wore age like lace, cracks and peeling layers not as flaws, but as poetry. Plants loved it too. Ivy crept in gently, moss tucked into corners, and the scent of rosemary sometimes brushed the surface like breath. You don't need countryside ruins to bring that feeling home. You need surface, warmth. Wait, choose plaster over paint, if you can, or lime wash a garden wall to let it breathe. Reclaim bricks or soften with fencing with texture and tone. Let things patina. Hang small tiles or tools, not to decorate, but to live there. Even a modern wall can be made ancient with intention. And when light hits it just right, you'll understand. A garden wall is not just what surrounds beauty. It becomes it. She called her green curtain. Lucia didn't have land. She had walls. But what she lacked in width, she grew in height. Along the old boundary fence, she tied twine, mounted mesh, and whispered her plants like old friends. Climb, she'd say softly. There's sky up there. And climb they did. First came ivy, slow and patient. Then came jasmine, bold with bloom and scent. Over time, the wall changed. It lost its flatness, became a living texture, shifting with wind, rustling with bees, catching the rain in soft sighs. It gave shade, softness, and scent. It wrapped her space in intimacy. In small gardens, going vertical isn't just clever, it's poetic. You don't need expensive trellises or ornate structures. Use tension wire, leftover mesh, or even repurpose ladders. Plant ivy clematis, climbing roses, or sweet peas. Let them rise at their own pace. Don't prune too early. Let the story unfold in tendrils. And when they finally meet the top, let them spill, cascade, fall like a green waterfall back into your world. Even in the city, you can grow romance. Sometimes all it needs is a wall and a little patience. Tomatoes above her head, time brushing her shoulder. This was how Elena grew her meals. With no garden bed to dig and barely room to walk, she hung her garden like laundry. Hooks on beams, rope from old crates, repurposed pails found at the back of the shed. Each one became a cradle for something green, something edible. It started with basil, then cherry tomatoes, growing plump and sweet in the sun. Parsley climbed in next. By summer's end, the walls sang with scent and flavor. There's a joy in reaching upward for your harvest, in brushing your fingertips across rosemary leaves just before dinner, in the weight of a warm tomato resting in your palm like a jewel. You don't need rows, you need rhythm. Begin with a sunny wall or pergola beam. Hang containers strong enough to hold moist soil, metal tins, fabric grow bags, even painted buckets. Choose herbs that trail and tomatoes that thrive in pots. Water from above, letting the excess feed the next tier down. Add color with marigolds or nasturtiums. Let leaves spill freely. Let them soften the wall. And when you cook, let your ingredients come from overhead, from your skyward garden, from the air itself. It's not just practical. It's poetry you can taste. When the sun dipped below the rooftops, Chiara's garden awoke. It didn't sparkle with neon or floodlights. It whispered. Through tiny bulbs strung like stars across the trellis, through lanterns rusted with age but warm at heart. The kind of light that invites you to stay. not to see more, but to feel deeper. A single candle in a hurricane jar beside the olive pot. A row of fairy lights pinned to the wall, weaving between herbs. Old sconces lit with tea lights, flickering against stucco. Together, they didn't chase the dark, they softened it. This was the hour when wine glasses clinked, when the air cooled just enough, when the city quieted and breath slowed. If you want this magic, begin small. Drape string lights across whatever structure you have. Beams, hooks, branches. Choose warm tones, never harsh white. Add a lantern beside a bench, a candle on a brick step, a low glow near a path. Use solar where needed, but choose fixtures that feel like they've lived through seasons. And always leave one light low, where moths gather and stories begin. Because it's not brightness we crave in a garden, it's glow, the kind that turns space into memory. There's a certain silence that only lives under vines. Marco built his pergola by hand. For posts, a few beams, nothing grand. But when he planted wisteria beside it, the structure became something else. By the second spring, it had disappeared beneath a cascade of violet blooms. Shade danced on the table. Petals drifted in coffee cups. The roof breathed. Underneath, it didn't feel like a garden. It felt like a room that the sky had forgotten to finish. Pergolas are more than frames. They're invitations. For vines to climb, for meals to linger, for time to soften its grip. They give form to the intangible, the hush of afternoon, the scent of warm blossoms, the joy of shelter without walls. You don't need a large yard. A single beam over 2 posts will do. Let grapevine or morning glory find its way. Or wisteria, if you're patient. Add a chair beneath, a table, a cup, and let it become a ritual. This is where shade meets poetry, where structure fades beneath foliage, where even the wind sounds different. It wasn't large, but it held many places to be. Sophia's garden moved in chapters. The gate opened to a patch of time beneath her feet. A few steps forward, and a low urn stood waiting, surrounded by terracotta pots. Beyond that, a narrow dining table, half in sun, half in vine-dappled shade. Even the furthest corner, where a single bench rested, felt like a destination. She had created not a yard, but a series of rooms, each small, each special. That's the quiet brilliance of a well-zoned garden. Not in the grandeur of its scale, but in the feeling of movement, discovery, rhythm. You don't see it all at once. You wander it. To shape your own, think in intention, not size. Define areas. One for sitting, one for planting, one just for beauty. Use a shift in texture, gravel to tile, wood to stone. Use planters to guide the eye, trellises to separate space. A single urn, chair, or tree becomes a marker. Each element says, this is where you are now. And as you walk through, the garden tells its story slowly, not as a single view, but as many little moments stitched together, a living patchwork of charm and peace. No 2 gardens are the same. Not really, because some grow tomatoes. Others grow memory. In the back corner of Mateo's yard, you'll find a pot that once boiled soup, a rusted ladle now blooming with mint, a broken marble tile carried from his childhood home in Puglia, still cold to the touch. These weren't chosen for style. They were chosen for story. Each item whispered, I've lived before, when he planted around them, time beside the photo frame, rosemary brushing the old drawer pull turn hook. Something shifted. The garden was no longer just about design. It became about presence, about anchoring time. You can bring this into your space. Don't hide your fragments. Feature them. Use your grandmother's pot as a planter. Turn a chipped teacup into a succulent cradle. Write a name on a smooth stone and place it by the lavender. Create one small spot that feels like a shrine to the quiet past. Something only you will fully understand, and yet everyone will feel it when they see it. Because gardens aren't just made of petals and soil. They're made of echoes. And when those echoes bloom, your space becomes timeless.